So why do I own a Frederique Constant Classic Index GMT? Hi, welcome back to Not So Obvious Watches. I'm Pete McConville and a new series, Why This Watch? In this particular case, why do I own a classic Frederique Constant Classic Index GMT? Before I go on, I'll be very, very clear. This is not an analysis, it's not a review, it's not a critique, there's no attempt to be objective. This is purely my straight up first impression kind of response, very emotional, very personal reaction to this watch. So if you're after a detailed set of specs and everything, or a careful critique of how authentic it is, you're in the wrong place. Anyway, with no further ado, let's spin this camera around and get it started. So why do I like the Frederique Constant Classic Index GMT? That's actually a really interesting question, because in some ways asking myself that about this watch is really almost like asking myself, what do I like about watches at all? You see, when I bought this was my 50th birthday present, essentially to myself, in partnership with my wife, and I knew next to nothing about watches at the time. This is kind of what I knew. I knew that I had about $1,000 to spend. I knew I wanted something mechanical. I knew I wanted something Swiss. I knew I wanted something kind of dressy. After all, it was marking a milestone, but it also needed to be sort of versatile. I also knew from where I'd sort of been into other hobbies in the past, in cars and photography, that I wasn't going to go anywhere near a forum, because they tend to be the most toxic places on earth for newbies. And unless you really know unless you know a lot about a topic, I generally find forums aren't that helpful. All of that led me to Frederique Constant, a brand I instantly connected with. Its very ethos of affordable luxury really connected with me, and I immediately bonded with the idea of buying a product from them. That said, across the board, their watches tend to be fairly dressy, tend to be kind of formal, and that turned me off. So I was in this position of kind of liking the brand, but struggling to find something I wanted, until I stumbled upon this watch, I think on Amazon. Suddenly, this was a watch that had the kind of casual vibe I wanted, the kind of modern, forward-looking vibe that at the time I didn't even have the language for, but now I can say I like. And it just grabbed me. Oh, and right from the very beginning, even before I knew what a complication was, the idea of having that extra GMT function and all of the sort of things that says about travel and being away just grabbed me and said, this is something I wanted. So if you'd have asked me at the time, why did I like it? I would have said things like, it's a simple classic style that kind of fits every occasion, but is suitably dressy enough to act as a kind of a milestone. You know, I can look down at my watch and say, yeah, this reminds me of my 50th birthday. I was tossing and turning between the black and the white dial, but my wife hates black dials, and since this was as much a present from her as it was, you know, from myself to myself, I was perfectly on board with the white. And if it made her happy, as they say, happy wife, happy life. Now, 4 years on, I'm having another look at this, and a lot of what I felt back then, I probably couldn't have articulated it. So even now, the danger is that what I just said about this watch is really me looking back, you know, with 4 years of like running a YouTube channel and watch collecting and everything. But put that to one side. What I love about this watch is, in some ways, all of that stuff I've already just said about big and the big stuff, you know, classic styling, etc., etc. but it's also the little things which I've come to notice now. Maybe I noticed them before, but just didn't have the words to say. Like the mix of casual and formal in having every second numeral a Roman numeral, every second numeral an indice, having that little tiny little pop of red on the end of the GMT hand as this one little flag of color waving across this really just stark white dial. It just, I don't know, says something makes me all warm inside. And the hands, I just love the detail on the hands. So many times in this more affordable end of watch collecting, the hands are simple stampings with a fairly generic treatment. The way they've rolled these hands so that there's no harsh edge at all, no matter how close you get, they just look like tiny little jewels. And that's the same for the indices. I love the way that the light sparkles off the indices in the hands, off that dial. And it just makes me feel good every time I see it. And fundamentally, that's why this is my watch. Yeah, so that's it. That's why I own a Frederique Constant Classic Index GMT. Hope you enjoyed that. If you did, like, subscribe, leave a comment below. If you didn't, still like and subscribe. Leave a comment below about what you didn't like about it. Bearing in mind, there's not a lot of room for me to change here because it's just my very subjective opinions, very personal emotional response to this watch. So if you do want something different, you're probably in the wrong place. Anyway, thanks very much, and I'll catch you later. Bye.